And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved it so much you came back for more. Folks, that was a fantastic decision because we have a lot more for you. Now, why do we have so much more for you? Because this is the podcast that's about podcasters. It's for podcasters and it's done by podcasters. That's right. And our guest today, amongst other things, is wait for it. A podcaster. That's right. Folks, you are absolutely brilliant. You made a great decision coming back. This is the place where we all come together to raise each other up, and this is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's get sailing and bring in our guest today. He is the founder of Resonate Purpose. He is the writer, and I can't wait to hear more about this, the writer of Church Nerd Newsletter. I think that describes me pretty well, actually.
Mhm.
And he's also the host of the hit podcast Future Christian Podcast. Folks, please welcome Loren Richmond Jr. Loren, brother, how you doing today?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for having
being.
me.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Can't wait to hear about all the stuff that you're doing and about your podcast. Before we dive into that, just give everybody an idea. Who is Loren Richmond Jr.? What are you about? What brings you here?
Well, I guess the easiest way to say it, like I'm a suburban dad and kind of enjoying being sort of a house dad. I don't know what the slang is these days, but my wife is the big breadwinner, so I have a couple of part-time hustles, which we may not talk about. And a lot of times it's just me hanging out at home, trying to get stuff done between, school bus drop off and school bus pickup. So today I actually did something pretty fun for suburbia, being that I live in suburbia, as I made three errands all via bike. So it was
Oh,
fun.
wow. All by bike?
Yeah, it was about 10 miles because I want to get a ride in, but
Wow.
it was a good trip.
Brother, I can't imagine riding through my neighborhood on a bike. Is that something you do a lot, biking?
I mean, I like to exercise, so, I was just had coffee with somebody who's new to Colorado yesterday. I told them like, Colorado's pretty outdoor active, you know, active outdoor state. So,
Mhm.
just part of the culture, I suppose.
Wow. All right, cool. Well, Indiana, we like to sit in the air condition, over here. So we're a little more sedentary. That's why we make corn and, everything else out here.
Corn
But
sweats, probably, huh?
I love so hey, all right. Loren, you've got Future Christian Podcast, first of all. Then you've got Church Nerd Newsletter, and you have founded Resonate Purpose. Why don't we start with what's Resonate Purpose about? I mean, you're the founder of that movement. Is that one of the side hustles?
Yeah, yeah, it is. So, I think this was really a side hustle that I started to kind of pay for my own podcast hobby.
Hmm.
Is I'm like, hey, I'm podcasting for Future Christian and I need to figure out a way to pay for it because I wasn't attached to an institution that a lot of podcasters tend to be or podcasts. So I thought, hey, I'm making a podcast. Can I make podcasts for other people? And that's sort of what I've done for about 5 years now, and I've expanded out here recently to try to think more about helping organizations really thrive and survive in many ways, trying to help get them unstuck, think about um, their ideas and how they can break free of kind of that stuckness and lead with vision and imagination.
Nice. So your clients are mostly churches and nonprofits, is that right?
Right, right.
Okay. All right. So you're not working with the average, indie individual podcaster by and large.
I mean, part of what I do is certainly podcasting still, but again, like I think what's become clear to me, and I'm curious your perspectives on this, but I think what's become clear to me is like in our in our current media climate, like it's not who has the best ideas, it's who's best at getting their ideas out there. And I think I have pretty darn good ideas. So I'm like, I need to figure out a better way to get my ideas out there. So Resonate Purpose is one of the ways that I'm trying to get my ideas out there to help churches and organizations lead better, communicate better, get unstuck, have more vision and imagination, whether it's through, media and podcasting, whether it's through discerning their organizational future, whether it's fundraising and development, or whether it's, just kind of preaching and teaching principles.
Nice. I honestly could not agree with you more on what you just said about getting the
Right.
idea out. We have a lot of folks walking around with fantastic ideas, and no one knows they have them. So
Right.
that's perfect way of looking at it. Okay, so that's what you do there. That's fantastic. That's Resonate Purpose. That's the name of that.
ResonatePurpose.org.
.org. All right.
Yeah.
Make sure we're getting the whole thing out here. Perfect. ResonatePurpose.org. You got it, man. All right. So let me move over too, because you're the writer of the Church Nerd newsletter. Now,
hmm
are you the church
hmm
nerd or you're just
Well,
writing it about nerds? What are we doing?
it's on my shelf. You can't see it here. It's on my other bookshelf over my left shoulder. I actually do have, a church nerd patron saint of church nerdiness that I was gifted
Oh
a
my
few years
goodness.
back. One of those kind of saint candles. A
Hmm.
former church boss gave it to me, which I've certainly appreciated greatly. So, it's unofficially official, you might say.
Got it. All right. So now let me clarify. Is this for a guy who's a nerd, like, comic books and Star Trek and all this stuff that I love also, who happens to be in church? Or is this someone who's a nerd about church and like knows all the different things about the Bible and like what's printed on page 17 and all this kind of thing? Well, which
I
way does
mean,
that roll?
yeah, it's more the latter, except my thing tends to be like church architecture and history.
Ah,
So, I have a middle school age daughter now, and she's, had to live with me now for 13 years, and she understands like if we're going to a new place, dad wants to go see all the churches and take pictures, and hear the stories if possible too.
nice. All right. So
Because
go ahead.
yeah,
That's what makes
because
you a nerd.
sorry if I can rant on this for a moment, but like churches, especially church buildings, like they really speak to the history and culture of a community. They speak to what a community value they hold and tell stories of their own. So I think there's a lot of interesting, that again, that's why I appreciate churches because they speak to what those communities valued and
Nice.
people have gathered there in many instances for, decades, at least in the States, hundreds of years, longer in some places, of course, overseas.
Nice. Nice. So, you appreciate, of course, the architecture, and
Right.
the art that's in front of you, but you're much more enthralled with the history behind it and what
Yeah.
it's about and why it came to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
And that makes you a nerd, huh? I think that's fascinating. I think I'm the same way in a lot of ways.
Right.
So, yeah, we for my anniversary here recently, my wife took me to our local art museum that we hadn't been to, and I've never been there, and she hasn't been in a long time. It's at the University of Notre Dame, and she's looking at all this art and just loving it. And I'm reading every single plaque as we walk by, and all of the
Mm.
stuff behind it. And she's like, "We're never going to get through the art museum if you're going to read every single thing."
hmm
I'm like, "Well, isn't that why we're here?" It was much more interesting. So I tell you, I get it. I do get
Yeah.
that idea. So what's the newsletter about then? Do you talk about the stories behind these things?
I mean, the newsletter tends to be a mix. I actually was just doing some final touches on something that's coming out Monday as we're recording this. So depending on when you release this, it may have already been released. But kind of a fun story is I'm ordained in a tradition called the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. And there was a guy, and he's unfortunately just passed a couple of years ago, but he was a clergy person, a pastor in Wyoming, and he wrote histories on the movement within state of Colorado, within the state of Wyoming, and I read both of them, and they're very it's hardly like compelling stories, but I think there's always something interesting to be garnered, to be learned from that history. Like this post coming up is just kind of about like church planting within like this 100-year history from 1900 to, or excuse me, from 1800. I guess I'm getting from 1850 to 1950, what church planting looked like within Wyoming, and how I think there's still correlations even from that 100-year period in a very frontier state like Wyoming that we could still apply today.
Hmm. All right, excellent. Now, how often does that come out then?
I mean, I'm trying to get to a regular schedule of twice a week, Monday and Friday.
Okay. Is this a fairly new thing? Or have you done it
I've
for a
been
while?
doing it, I've been doing it for a while. It's hard to remember how long it's been going.
Okay. All right, good deal. Now, this and information about Resonate Purpose and stuff, is this housed on a website someplace? Are there links or something that I can put in the show notes to these for people?
Yeah, resonatepurpose.org has all
That's
the
it.
links, and I'll make sure I send you anything. I think I've been kind of doing Substack is weird. It's just like any kind of social media in many ways where you kind of toil and meet in obscurity, right? For forever. And then if you're lucky, something kind of goes viral and you kind of get. So I had a post about 6 months ago now, maybe like just go stupid viral and get like 70,000 views.
Wow.
So, things have slowed down a bit since then. I've had to be okay with that.
What was the post? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was just kind of like so I list myself on Substack as someone who's like critiques progressive Christianity from the left. So, I think it was kind of just enough of a clickbaity title and concept that I got a bunch of subscribers. And I think even since then, like I try not to be pure clickbait all the time. And I think I've actually lost subscribers because I think I'm not like angry and rageful enough probably for them. So it is what it is.
Well, there's plenty of people contributing to the anger and rage crowd.
Right, right.
We don't need any more. So
I
good for
think
you.
that's what's been frustrating about Substack is it seems like, it's become just the algorithmic anger, you know, obsession like other platforms. So we'll see what becomes of Substack. I certainly like it as a platform. I think it's more
Sure.
thoughtful and nuanced than
Interesting.
other, certainly.
Excellent. Okay. Well, you definitely have this. You've got a faith-based of some kind theme through all of your projects.
Right, right.
Is this something that you've been involved with since, I mean, for your whole life? Were you raised that way, or is this something that like came into your life later on? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, church has been a part of my life, pretty much my entire life. And I've been committed to church one way or another that's looked different in different ways. I did the whole, grew up very conservative, did the whole deconstruction thing before it was cool, 20 years ago, and have sort of mellowed out a tad bit. And I think this is the point I try to make in my Substack, and I'm what am I trying to say? I am dependent on authors smarter than me, like Andrew Root, who has really worked from the thinking of philosopher Charles Taylor. But basically, this idea, like, we live in a very quote unquote secular culture that lives as if God doesn't exist. And much of my writing has centered around like this idea that like church, and I think this is true in both progressive and even conservative churches, that we act as functional atheists, and that has implications on both the left and the right. And for my purposes, like I said, I critique progressive Christianity from the left. Like I think the implications are on the left is that church becomes irrelevant. And I think it matters, and I think church is important, and the worship of God is important, and that's what I try to talk about.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. I mean, hey, everybody has their story. This is
Right,
yours. I love it. I
right.
appreciate you sharing that with everybody. Um, how do you, how did you get started with then the Future Christian podcast?
Yeah, it was like many things many people did during COVID when somebody needed I needed a hobby, I needed something to do, and this was actually I was leading a church start in during that time, and I think this was stupid of all of us, but we were all like, oh, let's do more when we're going through a global pandemic. So sure enough, I picked up this thing and have been able to kind of carry it through different jobs, multiple job changes, and now that I have a co-host who does some episodes, who's actually Canadian, which is fun. We got to see one another this summer. And yeah, it's been a great ride. I really have enjoyed doing it. And like I suppose like any labor of love, right? There's just some point you're like, boy, I really just want to quit tomorrow.
I
And
understand.
you're like, oh, I really enjoy doing this, so I want to keep doing it.
Nice. The title. How'd you come up with that, and what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, I I cannot take credit for the title. I have to give a shout out to my colleague, and I still work with him in other projects, Paul Romick Levitt. We were working together at that time for the new church, and we were kind of brainstorming title, and he had Future Christian. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. And really what the podcast has been primarily about was about future oriented church stuff. And I've really kind of narrowed that focus now to be more like, to use a big word, an ecclesiology centered podcast, like really focused on the health and vitality of the church now and then going into the future.
Wow. Wow. All right. I love that. And that's cool that you gave a shout out to, who actually came up with it. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Very cool for you. Do you want to give a shout out to your co-host?
Oh yeah, I should. Martha Tatarnik, she's Canadian Anglican. We just got to connect in June, I think it was. She lives in Niagara region, so it was fun. I got to see Niagara Falls with a wife, and then, safe travels across the border, which is kind of can be sketchy, these days that we're living in. So, but it was a great time. Really enjoyed seeing her in person because we'd never met. She was someone that I had on. She wrote a book kind of inspired by COVID of like asking the basic but I think important question, like why do we gather? The book was Why Gather, and I found the book, which is kind of how I find a lot of guests, is I just see what looks interesting, what books are coming out that seems like an important conversation or a conversation that I'm interested in having. And I had her on, and she was intrigued by what I was doing and wanted to be a part of it. And we've kind of worked together since, and it's been a great ride.
Wow. All right. Excellent. Well, hey, I hope that she gets to hear this and appreciates the shout out. So, the podcast you've been doing for a while now. You've got, 237 episodes. Is that right? That's what I pulled out of there. Yes, perfect.
Yep.
All right. I mean, that is not nothing. That's something. You've been doing this. So, are you guys a weekly at this point?
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much. Yeah.
Cool, cool. And then what do you, I know that how you feel about social media, of course, because you were pretty clear about that a few minutes ago. So, how do you go about promoting the podcast itself, or do you?
I mean, not well enough. I go through phases in life where I'm just like, stupid, social media is wasted time. And then, I don't know. I think I mean, it's hard because social media is really like there's social media tends to be about like if you pay to get advertisements, you'll get views, you get clicks. Or if you spread like virality and anger. And I don't want Future Christian to be like that. That's not what I try to do. I mean, I purposely like Martha and I talked about this when we were together in person. Like, I think the podcast would do a lot better if I just stuck to one tradition, like my denomination or the mainline Protestant tradition or evangelical Protestantism. But we have on a lot of different guests that are from different contexts and probably hold different theological perspectives on many different things. But I think there's so much learning and wisdom and insight to be had in those different conversations. I had on an African American pastor from the Pentecostal holiness tradition. I think he said it was. And it was such a great conversation. And I'm glad to be able to have had that conversation with him and not been boxed in by labels or pre-written kind of norms.
Hmm. Interesting. Labels or pre-written norms. Okay. I mean, you're saying a whole lot without saying a
I
lot.
am.
You really are. Okay. All right. Excellent. Um, That was one of my questions is how do you decide who comes on your podcast, of course? Is this something that you and your co-host decide together? Is there a particular thing you're looking for, or is it just a good conversation with people who, are qualified in some way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be like church centric. That's kind of what we generally do.
Hmm.
And I don't, Martha doesn't vet my conversations. I don't vet hers, and there's some level of trust. And again, mostly I'm just like seeing what's coming out from the publisher because I love to read, and podcasting is a great excuse to get a bunch of free books. So, if there's any listeners in the Denver Metro and like you're hearing this and you're like, oh, I want some books to read, like scroll my podcast, see who's been a guest. Like I probably have a copy of their book sitting around, and I'd like to give it to you just to get it out of my office that has I'm looking around just stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of books that I'm trying to get rid of. And then, sometimes it's just people who are having interesting conversations on social media. Certainly Substack has been a great way to find new voices. And then sometimes people just randomly email me, and sometimes I think, yeah, that would make for a good conversation that I want to have on the podcast.
That's fantastic. It's really good to be open like that, a little bit because then you
Mhm.
don't have any trouble finding guests. That's for sure,
Right.
but it sounds like you still stick with your theme through
Yeah.
your podcasting. So,
Yeah.
all right. So the answer on promotion was really really not at all.
I mean, I'm trying to do better.
I'm not trying to nail you. I'm just curious. I mean, because you've got a big podcast. Looks like it's doing pretty good. And, I mean, people want to
Yeah,
hear, if you hate social media and you got a better idea, I think, yeah, I
I
got a few
don't. I mean,
thousand listeners who would love to hear it.
I think Substack offers a better platform, but again, like growth on Substack really comes through their algorithm, through social media algorithm. So, I mean, I think getting to an email-based platform, I think is smart. I think podcasters who can be a part of some kind of institution or other kind of network or structure. So there's like an existing kind of segment or listenership to already to latch onto is a good idea. But yeah, otherwise, because you're really just kind of struggling to gain traction and just depending on having compelling and interesting conversations. So I've been fortunate to do it, and I think like like many things in life, if you do something long enough, you start to get traction. And I think that's in many ways just the name of the game in life. It's just like if you're going to do something, do it, and you can make it successful in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I mean, hey, I totally understand what you're saying, and I actually agree. It is very difficult to build on social
Right.
media. I mean, you have to
Right.
be on there a lot. Everybody who, oh, you don't have to post 10 times a day on social media. They're just trying to sell you some program. Something else that isn't going to work. Because let me
And
just tell you,
I'd rather be reading a book than posting.
right?
I mean, 10 times a week, even. My goodness, like
It's a lot, I know, but and you're right. If you buy ads, they help you out plenty. If you're not buying ads, they don't care about you at all. So yeah, you're
no.
just hanging out. But no, I understand that completely. In terms of again, back to the podcast and talking about that as we go. Um, the Have you done anything? I remember I'm thinking because I listened to your podcast and I know you had a lot of ad breaks on there, but a lot of them sounded like it was self-promotion. So were there ad breaks on there that were not you guys or one of your companies in some capacity? Or, I mean, have you monetized in some way? And I'm just curious, where you are, what your thoughts are on that type of thing.
Yeah, I've done different things in over the years. So I currently get a small sponsorship from my seminary, Phillips Seminary. Shout out to them.
Great.
Thank you for their support. And then I've done the kind of like trade-offs, or what am I trying to say? Like, kind of trades where, I'm giving them sponsorship or notoriety and they're supposed to do the same for me. It seems like I always get stuck kind of in the carrying the bag because I think, with podcasts dropping ads, like those things play and play and play. So it's hard to I'm actually having a conversation Monday with somebody to try to work out another partnership and see if there's another way to kind of sort of strategize a better way. So it so I'm kind of getting fair trade for myself, I suppose.
Okay. All right. So you got some trades, you got a small sponsorship, you said. So you have monetized
Right.
and you're actually pursuing it actively right now, which is great.
Right.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your side business, your Resonate Purpose, where you're
Hmm.
producing podcasts for businesses.
Hmm.
Now, in terms of that, are you, if you don't mind me going back to that just for a minute, on a
Yeah.
segue, but the resonatepurpose.org, that particular project that you're on, working with the churches and the nonprofit organizations to get their word out, build their podcasts. Are you in the production of the podcast? Are you doing the podcast for them or with them as a host? If I'm a not-for-profit and I'm listening to this right now and I'm like, maybe I need a podcast. I wonder what this Loren guy has to offer me. What does your company do?
Yeah, so certainly from the media production side, I've primarily been on like everything, like you press record and I take care of everything on the back end. Like that's been my primary role. I'm getting into some jobs now that are more labor intensive that we're gonna be involved more with story formation and narrative. So still kind of we're still in process with that. I again this has kind of been the story of my process here. Just keep it simple and build slowly. I think that's like the number one thing that I tell aspiring podcasters or that tell anybody whether starting anything like I've been and this relates to something else that I've tried to utilize in my own life, this idea of micro habits. Like in Denver Metro, school just started Tuesday as we're recording this, so 4 days ago. And the first day of school, after the kids got home, I said, let's sit at the table and do quote unquote homework for 90 seconds. Like my goal is to get them so they're doing 30 minutes of homework a night. But I know on the first day of school, like getting them to sit down at the table for 30 minutes is going to be impossible. 30 seconds itself was even hard, if you could imagine. So I think that's the same thing I'd always say is like think about what you want to do and try to do it small scale, something you can build and sustain and build off of. And that's kind of like I said, what I've done with Resonate Purpose. Like it was just a media production company, podcast production company, and I found like, hey, I'm doing all these different things. Like I'm helping companies clarify their message. I'm helping organizations think outside the box and think creatively and strategically. Like I've done this well for 2 to 3 years. Let me expand my brand and do more into the organizational side. So I'm not just doing podcasting only or media only, but I'm helping them holistically for their whole organizational health.
Nice. Okay, that makes sense. I'm curious how all of this stuff kind of works together. So I appreciate you, humoring me on these questions because I'm always
Yeah,
fascinated when I talk to people about this stuff. And
yeah.
the church newsletter then that you put out, and then the podcast. Does the newsletter promote the podcast? Does the podcast promote the newsletter? Do they work together? I'm curious if those have a relationship in
I mean, what
your
I'm trying to
overall
do,
scheme.
yeah, what I'm trying to do with Substack is I'm trying to like every Friday, because this is again something I enjoy about podcasting, just having like in-depth conversations with smart people. So what I'm trying to do every Friday is just write like I have a podcast that comes out on a Tuesday, so by Friday I'll write some kind of just personal reflection or thought. Sometimes, kind of rethinking or in deeper conversation with the guest conversation, or if it sparked an interest of mine. So like for instance, the most recent episode that I put out was on a guy who is an Episcopal pastor in the early stages of planting a church in Texas,
Yep.
Salina, Texas. Um, so like I just do a little blog reflection on sort of because I have church planting experience in my own right. So just kind of and then like I said, the Wyoming thing. So it's just kind of these reflections on the podcast and enjoying again for me, like being able to think deeply about things.
Nice. Okay. And maybe I missed this, is the newsletter exclusively on Substack then, as
Yeah.
opposed to an email list thing?
Well, Substack is such that it sends out emails.
Right.
Yeah,
Within, yeah, I understand
right,
within Substack, but so
right.
that's exclusively where people can find the newsletter
Right.
being
Yeah, and
published is
I
there.
have that linked on I mean, this is again like I'm not great at promotion, so I'm trying to get better. That's why we're doing this podcast.
I understand. And hey, you're trying to get the word out. I'm just trying to help you get the word out, man.
No, I
I
appreciate it. I
don't know
appreciate
where
it.
to
So
send them all.
if
So
someone is like better at it than me, please hit me up because like I just want to read books and have nerdy conversations and
you want to be that guy who's just hit
yes.
record and move
Yes.
on. I understand. I totally understand. I feel the same way. If I could just sit down and hit record and that was the end of it, oh man, my life would be so much fun. It'd be so much fun. You mentioned, coming on podcasts, podcast guesting then. I know you do that. Obviously, you and I connected and you're here today. Is that something you've been doing a lot of? How has that worked for you?
Well, yeah, this is something that I've been trying to do more of. See, for the last couple of years, I was working full time with a pretty
Hmm.
strict 9 to 5 job. So I didn't have a lot of time to do these kind of things. Like I could squeeze in an hour even Monday through Friday to do a podcast recording on my own. But now that I have some more free time on my hands, like I'm trying to get more into it.
Excellent.
Because again, it's, it's good having these conversations and it's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people have come on here and said that one of their main forms of promotion, they're even getting away from social media a little bit. And
Right.
one of the biggest ways they're promoting themselves and their podcast is by
Yeah.
podcast guesting, on other
Right.
podcasts. So
Yep.
you're already doing it. It's like, hey, the only thing better than being a host really is being a guest
Right.
because you don't have any work to do and you're still behind the mic. So, it works out, right?
Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, is this you at the beginning of your journey with podcasting, guesting then?
I mean, I've done it a little bit in the past. It just, like I said, it's just been primarily about a time situation where I just haven't had the time.
Mhm.
So now that I'm in a space in life where I can do it more, I'm looking forward to doing it more.
Awesome. All right. So we're looking for the Loren podcast tour,
Yeah,
guesting
let's do
tour
it.
coming
Let's
up. All
do
right.
it.
That's fantastic. All right, man. All right. Let me ask you this. I ask this sometimes of folks, the sort of your high and low. You've done a lot of episodes. So, what's your best experience doing a podcast episode, and what's your worst?
Well, gosh,
And no names.
no
I
names.
might know somebody, so no names.
I will not say names, but one was not too long ago. And like, I'm sure most of your listeners know this. Like, as a guest, don't say you can edit this out. Like, because you're just like, A, you're creating more work for the host on the back end, and then B, you're kind of like just taking like editorial control. And it's like, that's not your job. Like, you're the guest. So I had a guest like multiple times just be like, oh, you can edit this out, or they could, I get like sometimes they're popular and they get a lot of interviews, but it's like I really think like I actually prepare questions in advance for people because again, usually I'm reading their book and I'm not just asking like these kind of canned like, oh, tell me why you wrote the book and like I'm actually engaging with the material. So it's just like obvious like they're kind of mailing it in and hadn't left a lot of energy and like their kid kept coming in and interrupting. I was like, man, you're killing me. Like I get it. Like I've had to record from home too, and sometimes kids interrupt. But it wasn't necessarily like just the interruptions, just like don't mail it in. Um, I don't know if the high, like I feel like I really enjoy so many of the conversations. I think like I always enjoy when I get to a recording in person is my the kind of conversations like that I enjoy the most. Like my co-host and I, Martha, when we met in Canada, like we actually did for the first time recording in person. That was a lot of fun. And so whenever I can, like whether I meet someone here locally and I try to meet in person, or if I'm going to a conference, I'll bring along some recording stuff and just try to do something in person too.
Nice. The in-person thing. So, I mean, I've always thought that would be amazing. I've never had the opportunity to do it just because of setup.
Yeah.
I mean, because of the all the complications that, come with having to have a setup to sit across from somebody. But you've actually been able to sit and interview somebody face to face like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I've like a simple setup, so I have a couple like task cams, some basically like simple lavalier microphones,
Hmm.
so they just record. I mean, there's more complicated ways of doing it if folks want. I found that the audio is usable and good enough, and then I think like when I'm recording at a conference, I think the ambiance of the noise gives a level of kind of credibility, and I think as a listener, like I'm like, oh yeah, they're at a conference, like this makes sense that the audio is not perfect.
Right. Right. Interesting. All right. I mean, how much different equipment did you have to invest in order to be able to do the in-person thing? Just the lavalier mic?
Yeah, because I just bought a couple lavalier light mics, and I mean, this was 3 4 years ago. They were like $200 a pop, I think. So not nothing, but not crazy. I mean, I bought I bought some Shure Move mics, and I've never actually used them yet. Um, I hope to use them at some point, but
Excellent.
those are real simple, like Bluetooth lapel mics. I know that people who will do like a Zoom audio recorder and bring the full microphones, and that's fine. I mean, again, like my focus has always been like, let's get something recorded because a lot of that stuff you can take care of on the post-production side. And but I think for me at least, there's something a lot more engaging about being, in person or
I would
physical.
imagine. I think that'd be really cool to be able to do
Yeah.
that. So good for you. I think that's great you've been able to do that. But yeah, and I totally understand the your description of the worst episode. I get it. Were you able to use that one
Yeah.
that came out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not unsalvageable. It just was like, it was a book that I'd really found intriguing and want to engage with. So, it was just kind of like, and the guest told me they're like, "Oh, I usually get so many canned questions that I wasn't ready for your level of engagement." So I was like, "Okay, whatever, that's fine." But
It's a compliment to you, right?
I guess,
For sure. All right. Hey, I love that. This is, I appreciate you sharing this stuff. And yeah,
yeah.
thanks for leaving the names out because we got to protect the innocent here. All right. One of my questions I like to work in, and it's not a canned question, it's a corny question. So it's different. All right. And it's that when you're doing your podcast, what is it about doing your podcast that you love the most? And what is it about doing your podcast that you just, I mean, can't stand, throw it out the window, never want to see it again, hate the
I think
most?
you could guess which one I can't stand.
You may have answered this question in
Yeah.
pieces earlier, but I'm still going to leave it to you. So, all right. What do you love the most? What do you hate the most?
I hate doing the promotion, like putting together like an Instagram. I'm just like, what is the point? This is so stupid. Like, I'm trying to have a 45-minute conversation around a topic of, going in depth and engaging intellectually. And then I'm like, I got to condense this to a couple of sentences that's going to go get some clicks on Instagram. So that's the part that I just, you know, grit my teeth when I do. And then, my favorite probably is just like reading the books. I just read a book that on yeah, reading the books is for sure the most fun.
Excellent. Okay. If you want to tell a story about a book, it's okay.
Well, I don't know if listeners know anything about this, and I'm thinking that I just resent another email to the editor, but there's a book that came out called Circle of Hope, which was about a Mennonite kind of progressive evangelical church in the Philadelphia area. And it kind of tells this really like just heartbreaking story, to be honest, about this church that just fell apart during COVID because of different reasons. And the author, I think her dad was like an Episcopal pastor, but I'm not sure if she's even explicitly religious herself anymore. But she said she'd come on, so I haven't heard back. So I'm following up with her again to see if I can get her on. But it was just such a heartbreaking story, seeing these different conflicts come through the pages. And, to some extent, you're kind of depending on the author and trusting her storytelling and accuracy. But I thought it made such for, again, like even going back to that story I told from the beginning about the Wyoming history book, like I think there's lessons that can be drawn from a story like Circle of Hope to help other churches and organizations like not make the same mistakes.
Sure. Sure. I appreciate you sharing that too. AI. I always have to ask this question. And everybody has their own feelings on AI, but do you use it? How do you use it? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, yes, I use it. I've not done a full episode on AI. I think the most I've done is some voiceovers with AI. So like if I need to, so like my co-host and I, like we basically record each other's introductions, like the guest bios, for instance. So when I was working a job full time and super busy, sometimes like the only time to be home was when the kids are home and they're screaming. So I just do an AI voiceover. So I certainly use AI for show notes and different ideas for Instagram, as you can imagine. Um, I mean, I think it's like many technologies, you have to be kind of cognizant of what you're doing and the trade-offs you're making. I actually produce or just produced a podcast called AI Church Toolkit that was hosted by two Episcopal pastors, and I thought they did a really good job of kind of talking through the nuance and the challenge, but also like the realities of AI. And yeah, I think I would just certainly be disappointed that if AI like I saw like there was some kind of lawsuit against AI for copyright infringement. I would be disappointed if it like AI went away tomorrow because I think it's super helpful. I use it a lot. It's like I think in many ways it's like the next iteration in this like what social media essentially did. Like social media level the playing field as far as like anybody can have their voice heard. Now, certainly algorithms change that, right? Social media today is not social media that was 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or especially 15 years ago. Um, but social media really made it so that randos could have their perspectives heard. And there's good and bad about that, right? Like, there's been a lot of garbage spewed on the internet and social media that's not actually accurate or helpful or important. But again, it's kind of leveled the playing field. I think AI does that too. Like, there's been a lot of critique of like AI writing, and I'm like, people use ghostwriters. Like that's a thing in publishing. So I don't understand like the the moral anguish some people have about like I use AI to ghostwrite, or I shouldn't say ghostwrite. I use AI to edit my writing and stuff to different levels. So yeah, I don't. Again, I understand. Like, I think again, there's gonna be some drawbacks and there's gonna be some unexpected consequences. And I wrote a Substack about that. Like, I was listening to a podcast, somebody talking about them being working in the communications field for their church and like not worried about AI. Like, of all people who should be worried about AI, like it should be them. Like, church chatbots, like customer service chatbots already exist. It's not too much of a stretch to like think we could customize a chatbot for a church and take away somebody's job as the communications person for the church. So I don't want to pretend there are no implications. Like I think economically speaking, AI can and may very well be like devastating to some professions. Like we think about like I don't am I going to need a lawyer to draft some kind of law briefing, accountants, like there's going to be so many jobs that are going to be challenged by the expanding nature of AI if it continues to expand. So I don't want to pretend that there's no trade-offs or implications. I think it's like any technology, we need to be cognizant, be aware, be somewhat, at least as much as we can be, understanding of the trade-offs and the ways that it's changing our society and our culture. But I think in many ways it's a positive if I am wary in some ways too.
Great answer. Great answer. You've obviously thought this through quite a bit. So this is something that you're very interested in, it sounds like.
Yeah,
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. I think too many people are just sort of letting it go by and not paying any attention, and I mean, you're actually over here researching it and looking into it and talking about implications and stuff. So,
right.
very thoughtful approach, man. Yeah, power to you. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I do have one more question for you, but before we get there, what best way to reach you is the website, right? Resonatepurpose.org. Do you want to
Yes.
give out any socials or anything like that, just in case somebody wants to go take a look at them, or you want to be like, nope, those don't exist, just go to the website?
Yeah, you can find I guess the simplest Future Christian Pod on Instagram or Richmond LJR on Instagram. Two
Perfect.
simplest ways. And then Substack is just Loren Richmond Jr. So
On Substack. All right, gotcha. All right, we'll make sure that we get that stuff into the show notes. I do have one last question for you. I mean, you've been doing this for a minute, 237 episodes. Again, kudos, fantastic, power to you.
yeah, thank you.
That's a heck of an accomplishment, really is. And you're on your way to 250, which is like the next bump up, in
Going
terms of
there.
the algorithm helping you out for a change. So congratulations on that too. Um, what is your best piece of advice for podcasters who are out there who are not quite where you are yet?
I mean, I think in so many things it's just like being consistent and doing it. Like, I don't know if you've heard this joke, but I this is what I tell potential clients is I'm just like the joke is like people start a podcast and give up after 3 episodes. Like it takes time, like it takes continued effort. I mean, I'm the personality where I don't start something unless I'm sure I want to commit to it. And then once I do it, like I do it. And I've ran 2 marathons. Um,
Wow.
so like don't do it as a just I mean, you can, I suppose. You can just like try it and fail, but don't be upset when you don't get like overnight success by putting out 3 episodes. Like it's gonna take a long-term effort and make sure you can do it sustainably. Like I try to really build out my system to make it sustainable for myself.
Nice. Nice. Great advice. Absolutely great advice. All right. Writer of the Church Nerd newsletter, founder of resonatepurpose.org, and host of the Future Christian podcast, Loren Richmond Jr. Loren, thank you so much for coming on today. And I appreciate you and sharing everything that you did, and especially the way you did it. I mean, very thoughtful information today, from the heart. I really appreciate that, man.
Yeah, I guess can I ask you a question then? Like, do you have like I always like to learn from people too. Like, do you have
Oh
any
my goodness,
best
we're going off
insight?
script now.
Can
Everybody
I
be
can
ready.
I go
Hold
off
on.
script? I'm
Hold
usually
on.
one
Here we
asking
go.
questions, so I feel like I have to ask at least one.
Hey, how can I say no to that? We're still on the air. You got it. Go ahead.
Yeah, like again, like we're all trying to grow this thing. Like, do you have any insights? You've talked about guesting, and I agree that's a good way to grow the podcast.
Hmm.
I didn't know the thing about 250. That's apparently a thing. Like what, above 250 episodes? That's a
Yep. When you
okay.
when you break certain barriers, when you break 20, when you break 100, and
Okay.
when you break 250, those are big bumps. There's supposedly one at 50 too, from what I've heard. And
Interesting.
yeah, I heard that from a guy who worked at Google,
Hmm.
who told me about that, and that was something that happened on Google Podcasts. And so every time I've looked at that, you can almost see it. Like if you do nothing different with your
Hmm.
podcast, nothing different with your promotion, with your guesting, you don't like go find, some super popular guest tomorrow,
Uh-huh.
normal guests, the whole bit. And you go past 20, you'll see a little bump in what you're doing.
Interesting.
It'll get out to more people. If the same thing happens at 50, when I crossed 100 with a couple of podcasts, literally like an additional 50 to 60 downloads out of nowhere the next week. And I'm like,
Wow.
I didn't do anything to get that,
Huh.
you know? So every time I've tested it or worked with somebody else to test it, I've always seen it come through. And
Okay.
so
Well,
that's
I'm
why I tell folks,
like you said, I'm close to 250 now, and if I don't get this big bump, I'm gonna come back and be like, I am mad at you. Like,
hey,
what were you selling me?
I mean, could be, could be. And again, what am I selling you? I'm just telling folks this is what I was told. And so, whenever I've looked at it, that's been real. So, when I see people hit those landmarks, like 250, for instance, is a good one. It's a big one. When I hit that on one of my podcasts, again, I saw a bump. And, I think the next one after 250 is 500. So,
Okay,
they
I
get a
got a
little
little
more
ways to
spaced
go
out.
there.
Right. But the 250 one's right around the corner for you. And if
Okay,
I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I'd be like, yeah, okay, bud, what were you telling me about this? But he worked at Google. I was like, all right, man, you know what? If that's how it works, I'm gonna watch. I think I had the same attitude you did. I'm gonna watch when this happens, and if there isn't anything, I'm coming back to talk to you, chump. So, and it may not happen on episode, like 251, but after that, at some point, you get picked up. And again, as long as you're being consistent, I think that's a big key too. If you were to put out like an episode every whenever you felt like it, right, and then eventually you got to 250, well, I'm not sure you get any help. But
okay.
if
Can
you're
I ask one
religious
more
about it,
question?
well, sure.
Okay, Apple Podcasts, their whole system has been like since 2025 has killed me because I had this 20-25% steady growth year over year, and then like they changed their and I guess this hit everybody.
Mhm.
are there any hacks to get through that whole the way they change their downloading
To crack
process?
Apple's new thing they put out?
Well, because
Not
like they changed how those are calculated. Like, I don't know.
honestly, my advice on that is this. First of all, no, I don't know any hacks to get around what Apple did. Second of all, I think they did it to make up for what they were really doing, which was a whole lot of shadow banning of certain folks. And
Mm,
I think when that started getting looked at, they went, "Oh, we're going to pull everybody down."
mm,
And then no one can see who we've been pulling down. That's just
mm,
my thought. So, but again, that's stuff I've seen with my own eyes. So when you're dealing with that, I don't think that there's any way around that right now, but I don't think it matters because I think what Apple did when they did that was they kind of started taking themselves out of the game. They knocked themselves down a notch.
mm.
For us as indie podcasters, especially,
Yeah,
everybody was like, "Oh, I need the Apple review because the iTunes review is the one that's going to help me the most."
right,
That's not the case anymore. Now, any review helps you just as much as any other review. And to be honest, more and more and more, we're all getting away from counting downloads because,
right,
downloads don't mean anything.
right.
I have a private group on one of my podcasts, for instance, that has several hundred people in it, and they all talk about the podcast. And then I look at my numbers, for that podcast you're talking about, and I'm like, I, I'm not seeing all of you guys downloading the episodes. So how is it you're all talking about it? And
Yeah.
it's because they saw one of the clips and they
Hmm.
heard one of the comments and they loved it. And they follow the podcast and they love it because of what they're hearing, but they don't actually take the time to sit down and listen to the whole thing.
Right,
So I don't get a
right,
download from them, but man, I get shared on social media and I get, them being a fan and comments from them and interaction. I mean, so what really matters anymore, right?
right, right.
Downloads do not matter as much as people think they do. And
Yeah.
I've helped people monetize their podcasts with 20 downloads an episode because it just doesn't matter.
Hmm.
So there's always a way around it, always a way to do it. I coach podcasters and I focus on the independent folks. So you and I are not competitors. I don't really work with businesses. I work with independent folks.
No, and
It's the same
you
thing.
know, I'll finish on this. Like I try to take the Simon Sinek approach of, we're not adversaries, we're worthy rivals, I think is what he says, right? Have you read his
I've read a lot
book?
of Simon stuff. He's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I really appreciate the
absolutely.
time and thanks for humoring me on those questions.
It's okay. I mean, it's funny because I could almost see you like wanting to ask. You were like shaking them. You're like getting up on the mic, like, all right, I gotta ask
Yeah,
something.
like if I
It
don't
was
ask some
killing you.
questions, I feel like something's backwards.
That's the best part about having hosts on the other side of the seat is that they're all dying
Yeah,
because they're
we're
like
all dying.
waiting. They're waiting like I should be doing something here. I don't like being a guest. So it's you'll get to it, man. The more you guest, you'll be able to relax a little bit. Bring a cup of coffee with you, all right, and just sit back. Just relax. Everything will go really well for you. But you're a great guest, man. So don't worry
Thank
about
you.
it. All right.
Thank you.
Folks, that's been another awesome episode with a fantastic ending that came out of nowhere. So thank you very much for that too, Lauren. That's been another episode of the Podcaster Nation. And the reason that we have such fantastic guests on here and we have these awesome conversations for everybody is because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. Folks, we showed it yet again today. This is the place when the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.